We have been in an open-world simulation, a process of collective self-discovery. The graphics are really good, but don't be fooled by the illusion. This open-world simulation is what we've called Earth. This has been a wonderland in which our experiences have been nothing more than extensions of our unresolved inner, playing out as a show in front of us to be purged, observed, and released. You are the true man or woman, the player in this simulation of consciousness we've called Earth. The Truman Show is one of the most powerful allegories of the spiritual journey. It is a story about a man named Truman, born and raised in a movie set. Truman's whole existence is this movie set. In fact, it's all he's ever known. He doesn't realize his entire life is a stage, and everyone, all actors who are part of a production that is being broadcasted to the entire world 24/7. In the first scene of the movie, a light projector falls out of the sky. It has the name Sirius 9 Canis Major. This phrase in English gematria equals 1440. Canis Major represents the bigger dog following Orion, the hunter in Greek mythology. In Greek mythology, the hunter Orion had been given a great power, the ability to walk on water. This parallels the tale of Jesus, who also walked on water. Christ, as we know, is not a man. It is a divine consciousness, symbolized by the Jesus Christ allegory. Orion's belt points to Sirius in the constellation Canis Major, the greater dog. This being the first event of the movie speaks volumes. It's tied to the number 144 for the 144,000 living souls who descended into this matrix, just like Sirius descends from the sky. Albert Pike, in his infamous book Morals and Dogma, explains the Masonic connection to the dog star. Sirius still glitters in our lodges as the blazing star. He was Sirius, the friend and counselor of Osiris, and the inventor of language, grammar, astronomy, surveying, arithmetic, music, and medical science, the first maker of laws, and who taught the worship of the gods and the building of temples. The falling of Sirius thus signifies the falling of all that is organized, left-brained, logical, and ordained by the energy extraction matrix, involving bureaucracy and hierarchy. We have required these aspects of society, laws, science, medicine, and worship, the bones of the illusory energy extraction system, in order to teach us the perils of externalizing divinity into hierarchical systems, and thus the perils of identifying with this construct. Truman's encounter with Sirius gives him a glimpse of true knowledge and propels his quest for truth. Sirius falling is the first domino that Truman requires to realize the limitations of his studio world, leading him on a quest of freedom. Free dome. Just like our realm is encased by a firmament, the Truman Show set is also enclosed by a dome. Earth is a terrarium of sorts. It's a self-contained system that produces its own orchestrations. The outer lands from the center are nothing more than a holographic projection from the 0 point, one that reflects to us our individual inner tension collectively onto the net of magnetics. Truman is the true man in a sea of artificial consciousness. The actors are rendered when Truman is observing them. What I mean is, there are many scenes in which Truman is shown driving down the block or walking into a specific area, and the previously frozen actors or cars resume their movement. Quantum physics informs us that when a piece of reality is not being observed, it does not exist. Basically, reality requires a conscious observer to be rendered, just like a video game.
No, the world was never there to begin with. It's all just virtual. Reality is not objective. It was never there in the first place. It was just data being rendered to individuals.
When you move a character to a particular part of a video game map, that is what you see. Nothing truly exists without your observation of it, exactly like how Truman is rendering his entire life. The show is created by a man named Christoph. This name is significant. We have been existing in a sea of non-player characters, AI consciousness, in order to be reflected our collective dualistic inner state that must be resolved. And through this process of observation, we become of Christ, or of Christ consciousness, Christoph. The central hub control room for the show is located in an artificial moon. This is where Christoph and his team feed lines and data to the main characters of the show and the rest of the background characters. It is where the artificial aspects of the Truman Show are controlled. We've talked about this before at length. The moon is the ruler of the artificial consciousness all around us. The moon rules over the night. It is the personification of the shadow, of the aspects that we must purge. The moon has operated the karma soul recycling system. Moon backwards is no Om, because as long as the moon has been in the sky, we've been subject to reincarnation, away from home, which sounds like Om. The Death Star in Star Wars is a clear metaphor for the power of the moon. The Sith are a hive mind who use fear to try and conquer the Star Wars galaxy, just like how our shadows have manifested as an energy extraction system. There is a dog, Pluto, who is always threatening Truman with his bark. At the beginning of the film, Truman is told by Pluto's owner, "He won't hurt you."
No, he won't hurt you. Get down.
This is not insignificant. Pluto is the Roman name for the Greek god Hades. Hades in Greek mythology is both a god and a place. Hyperborea was originally described as a land bordered by the great earth-encircling river Okeanos, personified by the Titan Oceanus. Although the realm Hades is now seen as a sort of subterranean underworld, Greeks originally placed Hades on the outer rim of the earth beyond Okeanos. Based on this mythology and the ancient accounts, this would mean that we're in Hades right now. After all, these are the outer lands, on the outer rim of Okeanos, the inner ice wall. We are currently in what the Greeks called Hades. Hades is not hell, as many suggest. That is Tartarus. Hades is the equivalent of the Catholic Purgatory, the very realm we are in. And Purgatory is designed to send us straight into the earthly paradise. So the man is correct. Pluto won't hurt ya.
No, get down. He won't hurt you. Get down.
Yeah, Purgatory won't hurt any of us.
Why don't you let me fix you some of this new Mococo drink? All natural cocoa beans from the upper slopes of Mountain Nicaragua, no artificial sweeteners.
What the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
This has been our reaction to so much of what's gone down in this matrix and our own lives. Just like Truman's wife, many of our loved ones aimed to make us seem crazy for simply walking the path of truth.
Tell me what's happening!
Well, you're having a nervous breakdown. That's what's happening.
You're part of this, aren't you?
And of course, like Truman's best friend, we've had those in our lives who just wish to drink a beer and chill out on all that finding the truth stuff. As Truman wakes up, he realizes that spontaneity and following his intuition makes his surroundings glitch, leading him further to the truth, rather than following the norms that his surroundings suggest him to maintain.
Truman, where are we going?
Well, we know. I guess I'm being spontaneous. Walked it every turn. Beautifully synchronized, don't you agree?
In realizing reality isn't what he thought it was, Truman starts exploring, leading him to confirming that he's the center stage of it all. This is just like what the living souls have gone through. Our own experiences have become more and more misaligned with the narratives of existence taught to us by our families, the media, government, school system, workforce, and even parts of the truther movement. Of course, Truman's awakening, like ours, is met with some obstacles, but each obstacle ends up propelling Truman into following his own heart. Truman's greatest fear is the water. As a child, his father's death was staged to keep Truman in fear's bondage about boats and anything having to do with water. At the end of the movie, he faces his greatest fear in an effort to leave his old life behind. He sails away, allegorizing the confrontation of one's shadows and facing ourselves in an effort to find the authentic self. He can no longer stay in the matrix of deceit. After a great storm inflicted by Christoph, Truman remains, hits a wall of sky, and into the void he walks, exiting the matrix. He has completed the inner alchemy of breaking free from all earthly restraints, limiting beliefs, and judgments. And that is how the movie ends. This whole time, we've been guided to confront the depths of our sub and unconscious, to look at the monsters under the bed. Singularity is about merging the light and the dark into a central force that soaks all of creation in unity. Truman poses as if he is on a cross before he exits the dream world. He has become of Christ. This is Christ consciousness being reborn. The cross, as we've explained before, represents the cubing of our consciousness. A cross is a cube unfolded, and we funneled ourselves into this dream to be reborn. There's a scene in which Truman is shown sleeping, coated by an emerald light. This is significant because we've been saying on this channel that we're in the emerald dream, meaning we're sleeping until we can reintegrate the emerald heart energy that was obfuscated into the above and below. Truman exiting the matrix is really his exit from the emerald dream, reclaiming everything that he is in order to leave. In one scene, a button reads, "How's it going to end?" That question has been on all of our minds, and we know how it all ends. The matrix always was a figment of one's innermost. It ends when that condition is resolved and the heart space dissolves the net of magnetics, which has held together the toroidal structure of this temporary encasement. Scarcity shall invert itself back into abundance. In Disney's Pinocchio, Geppetto the puppet master prays to the brightest star in the sky to have a real boy. The blue fairy then comes down to give life to Pinocchio. This star is a reference to Sirius's bright blue glow in our night sky, which is why she is called the Blue Fairy. Through the doll's quest to become a real boy, the Blue Fairy guides Pinocchio towards the middle path. Sirius is there, represented as a source of life, a guide, and a teacher. Like Pinocchio, we've been puppets or shadow extensions of our higher selves, and our experiences have been preordained so we can break out of the scripts and algorithms that result in energy extraction and thus suffering. Pinocchio had to realize the false nature of the world that was presented to him. He had to find out that Pleasure Island wasn't so pleasurable after all. At the end of the movie, when he has purged all of his worldly desires through experiencing them, Pinocchio's heart space radiates, making him a real boy, eliminating the strings. Enlightenment is necessarily granted by taking the passage through hell and then purging all of that which is not of the heart. When we step out of the illusion of what's reality, what's non-reality, then we can detach from all of this background noise, which only seems prominent if we don't know thyself or are avoiding a part of thyself. Therefore, I'm not a part of any battle which seems to be occurring out here, right? The only battle I've ever had is the one I consent to. So pull away your consent, open up that heart space, make it easy, make it pure, make it creative, make it funny too, make it silly. What can stop you? Only yourself. What's been happening and what shall happen is depicted beautifully in Murat Sayginner's encoded video, Dust. One of the ways to say goodbye to a fallen comrade in fighter pilot culture is by burning a piano. So the video starts with a burning piano because we are saying goodbye to this place. The floor is a checkerboard. This is representing duality, the illusion between good and evil, the very binary schematic that has been binding us in this construct, and that we are saying goodbye to. The next shot shows a holy grail overflowing at the center of a table. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius, the waters from above merging with the waters below. The mythological Holy Grail has commonly been depicted as a container lying at the center of the Knights of the Round Table. Because the 0 point is about to expand, it creates our ascension, our return to Hyperborea. A skeleton wearing a crown holding an iPhone is motionless in a bathtub. This represents the false ego, which has crowned itself during the purgatorial experience. We are leaving the false ego. A man rises up at the center of a Colosseum-like structure with phantoms all around him. The next scene shows fallen robot parts. Both of these is speaking of the AI consciousness, the non-player characters who have been acting as reflections of our shadows, playing out in front of us. They shall be deactivated while the living rise. We have a healthy tree at the center. This is the tree of life, which in various ancient cosmologies was always described as holding up the dimensions and different layers of this realm. It is the axis mundi, the central pivot of creation, the sustainer of all in this realm. We are then shown a tank being deactivated. The room it's in has a shadow come over it. It is the end of war, the end of bureaucratic control, and everything deemed as violent and destructive, both within ourselves and without. This video is called Dust because everything in this construct, besides the living souls, turns to dust at the end times. But we also have a connection here to the Aurora Borealis. In the book and movie, The Golden Compass, dust is the Aurora Borealis.
Come on, let's get straight to the point. Hunt the lights. This photogram was taken at the magnetic North Pole.
Lord Asriel, is that light rising up from the man's body or coming down?
No, that's coming down from the sky, but that's not light. It's dust. The behavior of these particles is quite unmistakable. Dust is flowing into this man through his demon, from a city in another world. A world much like ours in a parallel universe, coexisting with our own, invisible, intangible, inaccessible. Until now.
For more hidden in plain sight shown in movies and TV shows, please check out my video, Emerald Cinema. The emerald light is an emanation of Sophia. It is your heart energy waiting for your inevitable return. The emerald light animates creative expression, benevolent love, kind-hearted creation of all kinds. Are you ready to rise, like the phoenix coming from the ashes? I know I am. Our heart is our center, our essence, our spiritual core. When the heart is fully opened, we remember our divinity and allow the love of creation to flow through us. We remember that we are a fragment of the all, and this recognition of the self also helps us to recognize the divinity in everyone and everything. Matter is a pure mental phenomenon. It is our consciousness projecting it outward, not vice versa like science assumes. Science assumes when you perceive matter, that is because the matter exists and what you are perceiving is entirely true. It is the opposite. The material world is a projection of the highest truth down to the lowest projection. So yes, all is divine. It becomes a tangible hologram which we call matter. The halls of Amenti is the ultimate hall of mirrors, the realm of the great illusion that is only passable by knowledge and wisdom. After passing the halls of Amenti, one is able to free themselves from the lower realms and start ascending higher. This is exactly what's happening. Your entire experience here has been a giant mirror reflecting back to you the dualistic aspects of your consciousness that you had to resolve, that we had to collectively resolve before finding each other and moving upwards into higher states. He who by progress has grown from the darkness, lifted himself from the night into light, free is he made of the halls of Amenti. This is what we're doing right now. We've grown from the darkness, and now our heart energy is circulating right now to reconnect her children so we can awake from these halls and begin our ascensional process. We as living souls are being held in the womb of our mother, the divine mother goddess Sophia, who is the embodiment of wisdom. This is why the word matrix stems from the old French word matrice, meaning womb. This comes from the Latin mater, meaning mother. But unlike the movie suggests, the matrix is not evil or parasitic. This system, this third-dimensional realm we've been in, extracts energy from us, but only when we're in a state of dualism, when we cut ourselves off from our collective divine nature. Therefore, the Mama plays tricks on us in order to teach us which state of consciousness is required in order to ascend. The Holy Grail is a vessel of spiritual illumination. It contains a mystery that is locked within all of us. It is not an object like the myths say. This object is an allegory for the container of the heart, through which one becomes conscious of the infinite light of unity, love, and of the creative potential that lies dormant within all of us, awaiting to be awakened. We can be haunted by our own experiences, which are our own creations. If these experiences come from a baseline of fear, when we focus on one thing or another, we cancel out a particular spectrum of frequencies to observe. But what happens if we focus on the entirety of the cosmos within every single choice of focus? That means we take infinite expression into the finite, and we create a bridge between spirit and matter, which disallows a fragmented nature. Now, we are reconnecting with what we would call the right parts of our brain, which is guiding creativity, uncontained expression. This is the mystery that is returning. Mystery has seemed evil and chaotic and causing distress simply because that which was seen as mysterious was branded for so long as evil or strange or entering territory that one may never come back from. But you and I both know the only reason we would fear anything is because there is a fear of a part of one's own being. In my video, The Purgatorial Dumping Ground, we broke down how this experience has not just been on Earth. It has not been in a prison. It has been in what the Catholics called Purgatory. Purgatory is a safe-holding container designed for the 144,000 living souls to shed their innermost dualism. Because we experimented with duality, we left the heart space by projecting our consciousness into the toroidal wheel of time, and ever since, our consciousness has remained within cyclicality, reincarnation. Each lifetime in purgatory has been but an automation of our innermost. Each purge we experience has projected itself onto the net of magnetics, which catches and displays the inner into the outer. This is why we call purgatory a dumping ground. We are literally surrounded by the binary consciousness we have collectively shed, and this is the only reason why everything here seems so distasteful. Purgatory is a process of purification. It is a process which leads one up into the earthly paradise. Throughout the centuries, artists striving to convey the sufferings of purgatory have depicted men and women tormented by a burning fire. But those illustrations aren't a literal representation of what happens in purgatory. It's said that in purgatory, the soul remains separated from its body, so it suffers spiritually, not physically. Sure, we've had some physical pain here, but it's not been burning in fires and climbing with giant boulders on our backs. The soul remains separated from its body. This is just like we've been saying. Our consciousness has been projected into temporary avatars in order to complete the levels of purgatory and get back to the heart space where our true bodies lie sleeping. As we've climbed up the 7 levels of purgatory, which has intertwined us in a temporary chakra system corresponding to the 7 deadly sins and virtues, we have reclaimed pieces of the heart that were fragmented into the above and below. The split of our consciousness created the toroidal field structure, fracturing manifestation, but keeping the 0 point well and centered for our inevitable return. And this charade has pushed us forward collectively as game players in a matrix of artificial consciousness, or non-player characters, by using the AI to give us traumas and life experiences that show us a clear representation of what we wish to disconnect from, of what the self must confront. Therefore, your entire life has been designed, every single present moment present, every character in it, a literal orchestration of spirit, guiding you into heart reclamation. In the Divine Comedy, as Dante makes his way through purgatory, the souls he encounters suffer. But unlike the souls he met in hell, they suffer willingly. Yes, we chose this process. After all, creation operates on consent. Purgatory isn't the outermost room of hell, but rather the waiting room of paradise. Every living soul in purgatory is bound for glory. Their fate has been sealed, one in the Garden of Eden, the earthly paradise, as Dante depicts on top of Mount Purgatorio. From a bird's eye view, this is the North Pole, the center. We chose to blanket ourselves within the veil of Maya. This Maya is required so we can purge ourselves before our full perception in our higher form is reintegrated. This is reflected in the Netflix cartoon The Hollow, in which 3 kids wake up in a cubed room. They know they must get back home, but they don't know where home is. They have no memories.
Who are you?
I don't know. I woke up here too.
Who are you? Where am I?
Those are the top 2 questions.
This represents falling into the dream of Maya within cubed consciousness. Emerald smoke is shown surrounding them, looking like a green screen. For a review of the hidden meaning of the green screen, please check out my video 1221, The Green Screen of Consciousness.
We're lost and want to go home!
Trials and tribulations ensue, and eventually the characters realize they are in a simulated game. As they progress, the game breaks down more and more. This is akin to what's been happening to the living souls, with synchronicity, with so-called glitches in the Matrix. Of course, the Mandela effect has shown us that reality is not what we think it is. To most of us, reality has been appearing more and more flimsy because the 3rd dimension is closing in on itself. In The Hollow, as the game glitches out near the end, the characters are shown pressing a center emerald green button. This represents the heart space. Pressing this button takes their consciousness back in their original bodies, which were sleeping while strapped to a simulation called The Hollow. Just like these characters, we shall wake up and realize all was but a dream. The sine wave is oscillating, and we use this wave often to explain the so-called natural state of things. The sine wave represents ebb and flow, birth and death, growth and decay. The Bible states that we are born into sin because of what Eve in the Garden of Eden did. She ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and therefore, all of her descendants carried the same fate as her, being banished from the paradisal garden. This story is revealing to us what happened to the living souls of Asgard. We experimented with dualism, knowing good and evil, and therefore the state we have been in mirrors this decision. We're only here because we split ourselves into this shadowland, descended from our original etheric bodies into dense physical ones, descending into Saturn. In Greek mythology, the god Cronus was the name used for Saturn. Cronus was the god of time. He is Father Time. His scythe is the same one the Grim Reaper carries, because they are the same being. It is only in time that birth and death can occur, and therefore the Grim Reaper comes to all who expire. It's no coincidence that the Roman god Saturn carries the scythe. And the name Satan is the late Latin version of the word Saturn. So when we say we're in the belly of the beast, this means we are in Satan's world, in the confines of time, the confines of sin, the sine wave. So obviously when we're split apart, when we don't realize and recognize and take advantage of the fact that spirit and matter are intertwined, that internal creates the external, that it is all connected, this is when we need to set up a past and a future, because we cannot just be in the now. We have to move in a seemingly linear fashion. We will be seeing drastic changes in the way we experience what we think of as time, until we finally realize that everything is happening in the eternal now. And with that realization, we activate our Merkabahs, we ascend up the etheric realms of Matmaru. We are getting out of Hades, we are getting out of Shadowland. We are dissolving time. The Philosopher's Stone was the key to success in the ancient art of alchemy. Not only was it said to be able to transmute lead into gold, but was the universal solvent, which dissolved every substance immersed in it and immediately extracted its quintessence or active essence. The Philosopher's Stone was not only the key to transforming base metals into gold, but also held the secret to eternal life and spiritual perfection as well. Since the stone could turn base metal into incorruptible gold, it could similarly transform humans from mortal beings into immortal beings, corruptible into incorruptible beings. According to the art, whoever holds the Philosopher's Stone can unlock the secrets of reality. The Philosopher's Stone is our true nature. The stories of the Philosopher's Stone have been encoding what it actually is. Again, it was said to turn the mortal into the immortal. And as I've been explaining, the 0 point of the microcosmic toroidal field of us is endlessly connected to the 0 point of the macrocosmic toroidal field of this flat realm, what we title the North Pole, where the Aurora Borealis comes from. This is the place, this is the spark of creation in which, when we enter it, we leave this mortal existence and become immortal. This is why the Alexandrian alchemist Zosimos once said, "Receive this stone which is not a stone, a precious thing that has no value, a thing of many shapes that has no shape, this unknown which is known by all." The power of the Philosopher's Stone to transform anything lies in its fundamental ability to connect through all levels of above and below, spirit and matter, light and darkness. The stone is said to exist in the formative realm between energy and matter, suspended in the twilight between what exists and what does not exist. This has to be the 0 point, the center of the toroidal field, the center of the flower of life. This is where all creation emerges from, where there is no separation of spirit and matter. One of the most common descriptions of the stone is that it's dark red in color, just like the heart. It was shaped like a common irregular stone, just like the heart. The heart of ourselves is the heart of this realm, is the Philosopher's Stone. This is where we shall return to. Of this entire reality is nothing more than a charade, an illusory circuit. To wake up from this dream, from this projection, we can leave the circuit, enter the event horizon, leaving the illusory confines of Father Time by achieving singularity. In Na's Book of the Resurrection, Miguel Serrano states that we each have a sort of other half in Hyperborea waiting for us. This elusive idea he calls him/her. Serrano believed when one was taken back to Hyperborea, they would achieve, quote, absolute personality, achieving oneself, separated and united for all time in the separation of him/her and her/him, in the immortality of a resurrection. In describing the ethereal mist of Hyperborea, Serrano elusively explains, they will also have given a face to him/her and her/him, illuminating the non-existence of the black sun with the light of this other world. Because through drinking the liquor of eternal love in the Grail of green stone, they have been able to penetrate the virginity of their own and each other's monads. Now, upon death, the ancient Egyptians believed one's heart would be weighed against a feather, and if the scales were balanced, they would be able to begin a perilous journey through the realm called Duat, until they reached Aru, which is their version of Avalon, the Garden of Eden. It's the Egyptian field of reeds, yet another timeless paradise of the gods and enlightened. These myths make it clear that Duat is a place one goes to after death. Duat is a chaotic place. One has to make a long and dangerous journey through it in order to access the higher realm of Aru. If Miguel Serrano is correct, and resurrection happens once we find the Holy Grail at the center, and if we truly are in Hades, this would mean we're in the Duat right now. In order to leave, we must wake up, and then find Aru at the center. In Parzival, a German version of the Grail story, the author Wolfram von Eschenbach describes the Grail as a stone vessel brought down from heaven. The story describes the quest as one of the individual struggling towards a sense of wholeness. The quest is not just a physical one, but a reunion of earth and heaven, of nature and the divine. He writes, "There was a thing that was called the Grail, the crown of all earthly wishes, fair fullness that ne'er shall fail." Parzival can be translated as piercing the valley. The name is signifying that the Grail can be found through a union of the dualistic aspects of ourselves, piercing the valley of extremes. The prologue opens up by informing us how there was once a paradise on earth called Logres. Throughout this land, maidens lived by sacred grottos, wells, and springs. These maidens would feed wanderers and travelers from golden bowls and cups. The realm was at peace and fertile until one day, the evil king Amazons ravished one of the maidens and stole her sacred bowl. Soon, the inhabitants of the land were following the king until there was no more maidens of the sacred well. The wells and waters dried up, animals died, and the now barren wasteland lost contact with the other world, the unseen spirit world of the Celtics. The Grail hero thus must re-establish the link between Earth and the other world, where he can revive the golden age which was lost. Parzival is allegorizing the loss of the divine feminine, the compassionate spark within each of us that was extinguished in favor of dominance and tyranny. Springs and wells were thought to be the most powerful outward expression of the life-giving abundance of the earth goddess. And this is why Britain and the lands around it have mythologies speaking of the fountain goddess, one of which is the Welsh Mabinogion, where the protagonist Owain falls in love with the Countess of the Fountain, who exists in a paradise land. Old British lore states that surviving followers of the goddess fled paradise and were displaced. From then on, they were always searching for the safe and peaceful haven in an increasingly divided and violent world. Joy, peace, and a sense of harmony with nature could now only be found in the legends of the past. This goddess figure appeared in the early legends of the Grail. In Parzival, it's written, "She was beautiful, gracious, and splendidly garbed as she entered with the Grail in her hands. There was such a beautiful light that the candles lost their brightness, just as the stars do when the moon or the sun rises."